on Anchor FM. We're on 11 different platforms, including Spotify and Apple. And this is being recorded, and it's not live, but it's being recorded. And we've been interviewing folks in the indie music arena since 2018. We've hit about 30,000 listeners worldwide. And so we're happy to have you on the program. You guys are from Melbourne?
Yes,
Melbourne,
that's correct,
Australia.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great. So you guys, safety word, you are an electronic duo, and you're kind of in the dream pop, chill wave, trip hop sensibility zone, which is pretty cool. I mean, I'm an electronic musician. I kind of come from progressive electronic, like talking about like bands like Yes, Genesis, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, that kind of stuff. I'm a hardware synth guy, but
Awesome.
But yeah, I kind of, and I show my age. I'm in my 50s. I kind of lived through that, and the kind of new romantic period. Bands like Joy Division, New Order
in the 80s.
Yep.
My thing.
We love Joy Division and New Order.
Yeah,
sure.
I did hear a little bit of that in your music. I'll talk about it too. I actually heard a little Syd Barrett in some of your stuff too.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
But I'll talk about that when we get into it. So, like, we sent you the questions. So I like to ask. I don't know who wants to go first, but the first question I always ask any artist or band
I'm going outside.
is when did you first get into music? At what age? Whoever wants to go with that first.
Yeah, you can go, John.
Okay, yeah. Well, I got into music probably. Well, I was always into music from a very early age. So probably from I guess 6, probably younger, 5 years old, around that period. I just got into the concept of music and formulating songs. My father, he was a musician, so I'd see him record and make songs and all that sort of stuff. But he would only do it from time to time, and so so probably from that age, I guess the first albums I got, I think it was like Michael Jackson, Bad. I got that on cassette, and then I got what changed my life was Prince, the Batman album. And and I'll just listen to the production of it all the time, and because I think he did it all himself. He basically recorded everything himself, and and I'll just listen to it, and it would just fascinate me. I would just put everything in there, and it sort of just stuck.
Yeah. That's interesting because I kind of was introduced. I bought Purple Rain on vinyl the day it came out.
Full on.
I rode down to Strawberry Records when they still had record stores.
Yeah.
And it was all vinyl. And I just was like, just totally entranced. And I had originally picked up his early stuff, and I was kind of drawn to him because I was into like Earth, Wind and Fire and Funkadelic. And I just liked the fact that I knew at age 17 he had produced his first album, everything.
Yeah, he did. What was it called? 4 Years or something.
Yeah.
That was a good album.
Yeah, and I was totally kind of drawn to that. So, yeah, I can understand. Your love of that album is a kind of continuation of him doing that type of thing, which he did back and forth. He'd go between bands and doing it all himself. So, so how do you want to answer the other, the question I had asked?
What was the other part of the question? Sorry.
Oh, well, more. I think I was just extending it to your partner.
Yes. I started learning piano when I was, I think, about 6 years old. So I've always been into music. My dad and my mum very into music. My dad collects Beatles memorabilia. So got a whole sort of room of my old bedroom's become his Beatles shrine. So he's got some, pretty good stuff in there with some of their like original pressings and stuff of their records and some rare books and things like that. So sort of grew up, listening to lots of music from a lot of sort of 60s music was inspired by in my childhood. And I was doing classical like piano lessons for a number of years. I wasn't very good, by the way, but I think it seeped into my soul somehow because I didn't really practice and I wasn't really inspired by it. But but I came through the piano and then into guitar, which I was really inspired by for many years. So I'd spend every afternoon for about 2 hours playing guitar, whenever I could. But yeah, when I sort of discovered music was when I wasn't trying to play someone else's music and I was just making up my own songs. That's when I really sort of discovered how much I loved it. But I came back
Yeah, that's kind of,
came
yeah.
back to the piano, many years later at about probably 1920 when I was at art school and I formed my first band. We used all Casios and old sort of 90s distortion pedals and things to make lo-fi electronica in the late 90s. And and just got really inspired by making sounds, really.
That's interesting. My first synthesizer was a Casio CZ101.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good
And
synth.
yeah, yeah. So I did the same thing. I took a Boss distortion pedal and a phaser pedal and put it,
Yeah.
through that.
Yeah, you get some really cool
Um,
sounds, and especially when I found, because you use batteries with them, when the batteries are starting to go, or just if it's an old synth from an op shop, sometimes the degraded quality can actually make them sound really good. Yeah.
yeah, I'm totally into that. That's why I like my analog synth. You pick up a '74 Model
Mhm.
T, and it's so old. The circuits are old. It's kind of those aged circuits.
Yeah.
Sometimes you like better than the new ones.
That's right.
Because that's why, like the new Prophet, you can actually age it. They have like aging dials, so you can make it
Oh
simulate
wow,
being 20
that's
years
so
old.
Wow.
cool.
Um, yeah, so it's kind of like that's part of the thing. It's like you build a brand new analog synth, and it's kind of like you like that a little that drift. You like the little inconsistencies you have in the systems. That's what I find when I collect these old machines. But I'm drifting into that. But so you already kind of talked about how you come from being an appreciation of music
Mm.
and getting into music, but then realizing you can write your own music. Um, so how deep did you get into that? What age did you really start crafting your own songs?
Well, yeah, I started from about probably from 6. I would just make up songs in my head and sing them, and then from about I picked up started doing like serious poetry around the age of 13, 14, 14. Yeah, 13, 14, I got into writing poetry. And then I picked up the guitar on and off from about 12. But I was just really, at about 12 years old, I was really influenced by punk music, punk rock. And I didn't want to learn to play guitar properly. I just liked to learn a few chords and just use that, the whole like less is more type thing. And I've been self-taught from I got seriously into playing music around 14, but it would just be self-taught. So I would just like to, you know, um, like sort of from Sonic Youth and things like that. Like I'd like to, change the sound of the instrument. I didn't want it to sound like a guitar, if that makes sense. So when I'd
Yeah,
play, I would be sort of really bending or just hitting one note or something like that, and in a certain way, to get a certain sound. So it was more about approaching the instrument not in a normal way. I mean, I was always thinking like the sound is paint, and I'm just painting with it.
that's really interesting. I bring that up all the time because when I was reading about Jimi Hendrix, they had asked him about like Electric Ladyland. And I asked him like, why does it sound the way it does? And he said, "Well, it's the sound paint."
Yeah.
And Hendrix used to talk like that a lot. He used to talk about how sound was painted,
Yeah,
and you can kind of hear it when you look. You really get into Hendrix's work. It does feel like that. It feels like he's like the first like
Mm.
electronic musician
Yeah.
in that he used his guitar in ways like a synthesizer.
yeah,
And
he
as a
turned it
synthesizer
into
player, yeah, I kind of felt it. I think anybody listen to Hendrix, you can kind of pick up on that. But
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah.
I think with the with the guitar, you can make it sound like a synthesizer in a way. Or it does. It can sound. It's one of those instruments that doesn't sound like itself, especially when it's affected a lot, and you can get all these just different sounds, and it's about the movement of it as well, the way you move it around, and if you watch him as well, he would really shake his guitar around, and as much as he would be playing it, he would be moving it, and the movement
yeah,
also adds to the sound, so
it's kind of like those newfound sounds. Like you see them, shaking it. Like if I
yeah,
got a spring
exactly.
reverb on a Moog, yeah, I got a spring reverb on my Moog, and if I shake it, it will give me these kind of weird rattly
Yeah.
sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of do that. You see him putting his guitar against the neck against the microphone and sliding it
Mm.
and getting all kinds of bird sounds and seagull sounds and ocean waves and stuff out of it. And it seemed like he could call distortion and the kind of more like he could do all these kind of feedback and get it in the right tone, like on demand. He knew his instrument, or he knew how the pedal worked or how the effects worked. He could call it when he wanted it, and that's I think the kind of key to his genius is being able to actually call that sound when you want it to happen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely.
I think I also read as well, because he preferred to have a right-handed guitar upside down. Having the guitar upside down as well also affects the pickups. Something like that I remember reading. It does something to it, and alters the sound as well of the guitar, the electric guitar.
Yeah, it's interesting
Yeah.
that you all talk about punk music, because punk has been like a
Mm.
big. I think the punk aesthetic is really a positive thing for musicians, because
Yeah.
it basically, if you think about like the '60s, you had all these like geniuses like Hendrix and Jimmy Page and Steve Winwood, all these Clapton, and there was like this feel that some of these people were like, well, I can't reach Jimmy Page's level, so I shouldn't even try, right? But then when you get the punk movement, where you get the Sex
Mm.
Pistols and the Clash, and band like Joy Division, people are like, okay, if I have some heart and I believe in what I'm doing, I don't
Yeah,
have
if
to
you got
be
3 chords,
like
you
Eric
can
Clapton.
you can
Yeah,
do something.
Mm.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, well that's interesting you should say, because I also came from playing in punk bands, lo-fi band sort of thing, where it was, just a couple of notes a song. So I was on a bass player back in those sort of days, which was in college, our year 11 and 12. Trying to work out what that is in the US. That's your senior years of high school. But
yeah,
yeah. So there was quite a big in Tasmania for DIY sort of punk bands, and it was all about sort of playing as loud and as fast as you could and shouting over the top. But yeah, as you say, what was good for that was you didn't actually have to be that good at your instrument to be in one of these bands. If you had a couple of mates and you had a love for music, and you just suddenly you were in a band one night after you got drunk or something, and you were like, "Hey, let's make a band," and but it's that sort of gang friendship mentality of being in a band is just so great. When you're 15, 16, you might just be going to get hamburgers
yeah.
or something, but so you just feel like on top of the world.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was a big influence for me was like Lou Reed and the Velvet
Oh
Underground.
yeah.
I had,
Yeah, big
read a Rolling
fan.
Stone. I read a Rolling Stone article like in the mid '80s, and they had suddenly, brought back all these Velvet Underground albums, and they had reissued them. And the Rolling Stone went back and reviewed them, and I was like a rabid reader of Rolling Stone, and I'm like, wow, where are all these 5-star records I never heard of, right? So I went
Mm,
right down, got them, and then I'm like, I had a little band in my basement. I had like a band that was doing like Clash and like Sex Pistol covers and stuff. And then we
mm-hmm.
heard the Velvets, and we're like, wow, this is what we should do. And then we started, playing "Waiting for My Man" and "Heroin" and all these songs. And
Yeah,
we just kind of we just loved what Lou Reed was doing. He was like a Dylan, like an alternative Dylan.
Mm.
And we were like,
Yeah.
we liked what he was saying, and then we just, it totally drove us. And then we started listening to like SST, this label in the US, like Sub Pop and stuff. I was listening to like the Hooskadoo and the
Mm-hmm.
Cramps and the Replacements, and we were like, so you can bring melody into punk. That's why I heard like Hooskadoo and Paul Westerberg. They started writing like Beatle-esque power punk songs, and we were like, wow, so you can actually try to craft
Yeah.
it a little bit more, and that's
Yeah.
where I kind of started.
Someone making
I
a cup
get,
of tea there.
Yeah, sorry.
yeah, I hear it.
That's quite
Apologies.
distracting.
Oh.
Yeah, that's right. That's good.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
We're talking about like that type of point in your music. The reference points is like the next question. You kind of brought up like who a little bit, but who would you name check as your influences and reference points? And when you started crafting music, who were your heroes or people that you wanted to be think about when you got into music?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really liked John Lennon, and he was incredible. I thought as a songwriter, you didn't need much because it just came back to the guitar and the voice and the melody, and I really liked that. I also liked, I was a big Nirvana fan as well. When I was 12,
Yeah, a lot of
12
people
years
think
old,
Kurt.
that was a big, a big influence. But also as well the Pixies as
Oh,
well. So
Pixies,
Yeah.
yes,
so I'd probably say after I heard Nirvana, then I heard the Pixies. I'm like, oh wow, that's
Mm.
basically where they got their whole sound from. That dynamic, the soft, loud, and emphasis on the chorus, and
that's interesting.
yeah. So that was. I think they really pushed me to like, okay, especially if music can be done. Well, Lennon was very complicated with his music, but his early stuff. But you know, the sort of punk. I think that the punk sort of stuff really pushed me to
Mm-hmm.
start doing music. There was something where you could feel the really raw energy, and it came out. And it was just something about it where there was no pressure. It was just expressing yourself, and I think people like to emulate musicians. And I got it in my head from a very early age as well. You're either an innovator or what was it
An
like,
imitator.
or an imitator, and
Yeah.
and it's true.
Yeah.
And people think
Yeah.
that. I think they get insecure and they think they have to sound like someone or they have to use someone as a reference, but really all music is just an accumulation of what you are as a person and who you are and your experiences in life. And when you look at any musician, they've all had, experiences in life that shaped them for who they are. They were at a certain time, they were at a certain place, that had an influence on them. And I think for me, it was always about my experience and how I viewed life and how I perceived my existence. And then putting that into music just came naturally. So music is only, the biggest influence is life. Just being alive. And then why do you want to do music for? What's the reason? And then it just comes back down to energy. You want to put all your life energy into a vibration, so then someone else can tap into that, and you don't have to explain anything. It's just there. The vibration of what a piece of what you are is, in a physical sounding form, that can be accessed physically, and that's it, So getting a bit more deeper into it.
Yeah. I
so,
like it.
that's yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of what I've done as a musician. I never really cared about whether or not I got anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like I have a feeling. I started with poetry, and then I got into electronic synthesizers and things. And I just felt like I just want to express something that's like my own, right? So I
Yeah.
figured out how to transition from poetry and spoken word into what I do with the ghost, and all my influences kind of show up. I mean, I love Sun Ra,
Yeah.
kind of freeform jazz, like Hendrix, like Kraftwerk, and like
Mm-hmm.
Aircraft.
Stevie Wonder. I mean, I have so many different influences, but it all just comes
Yeah.
out in what I do. And I just felt like I created this thing, expansive sound, which just represents any genre I want to do at the moment.
Yeah, it's good not to
And
be
I don't have to
limited
be,
by
Yeah.
genre,
yeah,
where you can
yeah, you don't want to
just
get
create
tied
freely.
to,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think today we've got a lot of pressure in the business, and I see producers sending things out saying, "Can you sound like Drake? Can you sound like this? Can you sound like that?"
Yeah.
And you get all these people trying to pitch,
Mm.
and you've got to sound like the latest top 10 hit. And that kind of takes the energy out of like new creators because everybody's saying, "Well, you know, I haven't heard this before, so I'm not going to push it."
Yeah. That's right.
And
Yeah.
so
That's the
that's
whole
always
point
been
of music,
frustrating
isn't
to
it?
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose
It's a
it's good
bit.
to have some sort of reference point for people like, oh, it's a bit like a cross between this and that, you know, X and Y, just so, I mean, to get someone to listen to it in the first place. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
So
Yeah.
so I mean, it's hard. Do you find it that you, when you deal with agents or you deal with
Mm-hmm.
managers, they're always trying to pin you into a like, okay, we can put you with this group or this tour or this thing. You know, that seems like when I dealt with some agents, kind of why I don't deal with them now.
Yeah. We,
Is I was
They want
getting
to
put
package
into
you straight
those
away.
boxes.
yeah,
Yeah. I was getting put in the boxes that I didn't really fit in.
we're fairly, you know, fiercely independent with everything that we do. We have, you know, people approach us on occasion, but I'm, you know, to try and do things with them. But we pretty much like doing everything ourselves so we can keep our artistic integrity, and we don't have to try and push, you know, a different sound or a different aesthetic than that we want to do ourselves. So, I mean, these days, you know, you can do a lot of it yourself, which I find really rewarding.
So that kind of gets into your how you guys put your music together. Um, you know, in terms of your
Mm.
process, everybody today tends to use a digital audio
Yeah.
workstation. A lot of people have their own home studios. Some people still go to physical studios. So, are you a kind of band based on what you just said? Are
Yeah,
you more like into home recording with your own DAW? Or do you go to a physical
we
studio?
do a combination of both. So we write sort of demo our songs up, you know, from initial idea to a fairly fully fledged demo, and then we just take it to our friend Ryan at Invention Studios to just do that last sort of 10%. We re-record the vocals and guitars in his studio because we really like his sound that he gets, and then it's just good to have a third person sort of mix the song with us as well, so you can instantly sort of, you know, they can instantly hear if there's anything sort of standing out like a sore thumb, and then he will also master the songs as well. So it's sort of us and Ryan at Invention Studios that put to songs, and yeah, we find that process pretty good before than just doing that last 10%, I find.
Yeah. Well, that's the reason why recording engineers are kind of like recording engineers are artists in their own right. You
Yeah,
know, because if you
definitely.
get a great recording engineer can actually
Mm,
make. I mean, I've read all this, you know, all these biographies of bands,
mm.
right? And the band puts something together, and then they send it to the
Yeah.
engineer, and suddenly the engineer kind of does that final production. And some band,
Mm.
you know, that final production actually ends up being the big difference, you know, in terms of how the engineer heard it and what they chose to emphasize and what they chose not to emphasize, or what they and they become like a member of the band in some
Yeah, yeah.
bands that
Yeah,
they can make such a big difference that it becomes being a hit or not being a hit.
Yeah, at the moment, I wouldn't want to
So
work with a
then,
different engineer. Like, we're, yeah, super
yes,
happy with
we're stuck.
Ryan, and I consider him like an unofficial third member. And yeah, so
okay, he's totally synced with what you feel.
yeah,
And that's one thing, like, it's finding that engineer or producer that you give them the demo and you then they suddenly give it back and then you hear it and it's like,
yeah,
that is not my vision,
yeah.
right? But then again, you could have, well, that
Mm.
wasn't my
Yeah,
vision, but
that's
it's
right. Well,
better.
often we'll have a fully sort of demoed song that, you know, we'll think that is fully releasable. We could almost release that, and then we go into the studio, and then just with that extra, bit of shine and stuff that he does with EQing and using his really nice preamps and all that sort of stuff. It's just
Yeah, he's got a lot of
suddenly
good lush
you
stuff.
suddenly just hear the song, and it's just that extra mile, and you go, oh, I'm glad we didn't release it as we were going to, because it's just so much better. It just jumps out of the speakers. It's good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's usually the
So
song. The song will usually demand it.
Mm.
I always feel that with songs they demand to be released a certain way. I know that songs are already made and there's songs already out there. There's an infinite amount of songs, and when the song comes into existence, it's already knows what it's supposed to be, and it's your us as music as people who are creating the songs, like bringing the songs out. We're just trying to do our best to be true to that song, what it's meant to be, and work it out how to put all the pieces together. Again, like a jigsaw puzzle, you want to put it all together so it has a clear picture of what it is. And I always feel that songs already there, and it just if a song's meant to be a lo-fi song, it has to be made in a lo-fi way. If it's meant to be a high production song, it'll be made in a high production way. It just depends what you're tuning into. And that song will tell you straight away, this doesn't work, or this has to be lower, or this has to be higher, and you'll hear it naturally when you tune into it.
Yeah.
I think that's the whole idea. What services the song?
Yeah,
Because I think you ask the songwriter, and they say, well, how do you write a song? And it's like it's a very personal thing, and it's like it changes from song to song. Some songs like are fully realized like in a dream, and some songs take 6 months and multiple overdubs. Some songs come out without any real strain on your mind. It just is free, and then other ones are like torturous to take you a long time to put together. You never know what's going to happen. And how it gets developed.
Well,
it just kind of
I do a process that I learnt through doing a course with a guy from the internet who's an Australian guy called Mike Monday, and I'm a huge fan of his. But he taught me this process of splurging, which I try and do every day. But it's about getting a song out of you in as quick a time as possible. So sort of like you write a song in 20 minutes to an hour, and you just sort of like almost throwing paint at the wall, but because you're never quite sure when you're going to latch onto something magical. And what you do is you create the song and mix it down and save it, but you don't listen to it for a week. And then you go and you listen to your mix, some 20 will jump out at you as something a bit special, and you can go back and read it, something more realised. But often than not, created in 20 minutes to an hour can actually become 80% of the song, and that's where I'll send it to John, or I'll invite him around to the studio and say, hey, what do you think of this one? And often we'll set up a mic, so the very first time he's hearing it, he sings what he immediately feels over the top of the song. And often, with just a few lyric changes and things like that, that'll become our actual song. So it's about just sort of going in and going hard early rather than procrastinating about it. Yeah.
I like that method. It reminds me of there was a story Neil Young, when he was recording his Ditch trilogy, or like Tonight's the Night and Time Fades Away and On the Beach. He used to just roll the tape with the band, right? They just roll the tape, and then he'd go back and he added like an hour, 2 hour sessions to find the songs. And then he'd go back and like Frank Zappa did that. And I kind of, what I do, because I kind of, I'm a music historian, I for 20 years, I would just go and do these long recording sessions in my home studio, and I'll go back and find the grooves. And then after I find those grooves, I kind of work on them and do stream of conscious lyrics over them, or do whatever I feel. And then those tend to work better than anything I
Yeah,
try
if you
to
try too
plan out.
hard, almost it doesn't work. Like I've tried both ways, and there's something magical about just trying to capture a moment and sort of just letting the music take you rather than you trying to control it too much. Yeah.
Yeah, I learned that like early in my career. I tried to like sit down and write it out, and I did once in a while. I got something, but I found that like
Mm.
doing this kind of jam band style thing was like it just ended up paying
Yeah,
better
yeah. So
better
we might
results.
jam on a song, and so it's like, a 15, 20 minute sort of jam. But yeah, as you say, you can find that 3 to 5 minutes within that jam and go, hey,
Yeah, you
that's the
find a
song.
bass
Yeah.
line,
Or
you
even
find
just
the chord changes.
cut it up,
Yeah,
yeah,
you
and go,
find a
oh, we'll
bass
take that
line.
bit
Yeah,
there and put it with that bit here, and then and maybe all we needed. Yep.
and do you find that the DAW? Do you find the DAW makes
Mm.
that easier? Like back in the day, I
Yeah.
used to just have a
Yep.
Tascam, right, or a Fostex,
Mhm.
and I used to cut stuff. And I mean, I got to it, but today because of the DAW, I
I,
can
I
find it's like a lot
I
easier
started on a four
to do
track
that.
doing guitar stuff with simple, sort of Casio things, and yeah, it was pretty hard to edit. Sort of what you had is there. I love computers for what you can do in terms of editing and arranging, and getting something out fairly quickly that's in your head. But yeah, that's definitely part of the process. Having it in a door, I couldn't imagine working any other way at this stage of the game.
I,
John's
I,
actually got a
um,
4 track.
with
That's how he demos his
yeah, yeah,
ideas. Yeah.
with
Yeah, I still have
Yeah.
mine.
I like it because if I had more time and
Yeah.
finances, I would take a lot more time, especially when I'm laying tracks down in the studio. I'd like to just do. I like the idea of having a challenge that you have to do the whole track from start to finish.
Yeah,
With a four
with a
track,
Tascam. Yeah,
and I've got an 8 track at the moment, but I like that idea of just when you start, it has to be done all the
Mm.
way till the end, and you can't stop it and start it again. You've got it's on you, and then you have to really concentrate, and I feel when you get in that mode by doing it over
Mm.
and over again, you get really good stuff,
yeah,
and then you really
Yeah.
learn a song, and then it comes out. You tune yourself more and more. It's a luxury to have that cut and paste thing. I think it's excellent for time
Mm.
effectiveness. But if you have more time and you have that time to do it, I think it's good to explore and invest in, because you'll probably find it will come out. It will get to the point where you'll
Mm.
let go, and it just comes out naturally. And usually that's the best stuff. And that's, as I said, that
yeah.
song's already that song's already there in the ether. It's just you tuning
Well, the
into it.
thing is, you've rehearsed it. By the time you're done, you actually have it down. That's kind of like the old
Yeah.
school way I like it as well. Is like if I create all my songs like that, I can easily go and play them somewhere because I
Yeah.
actually know.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I think the other thing is like the idea of
Mm-hmm.
I'm a DAW-less recorder. I mean, I spend all my time going into
Yep.
hardware recorders, just because of what you said. I like the idea of
Mm.
having a restriction. It's kind of like when I have some of my analog synths. I don't have a
Mm.
screen, right? I gotta do it kind of by feel. You
Mm.
hear what you get, right? And so if you're on a Moog and you're not on like a soft synth, you're kind of doing it by wherever those dials are, and then you dial it in,
Mm.
and you might lose it the next day. But it's kind of point in time, and that kind of point in time kind of pressure of like, okay, I've got this point
Yeah.
in time thing. It's kind of like paint. When you're a painter, it's like, okay, it's only going to be in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll record it and I can capture it, but it might not be that same way the next
Yeah.
day.
There is something
It
magical about that for sure.
kind of
Yeah.
forces you.
Mm.
About yeah. So I find with the writing process in terms of working inside the door, taking something that's from just a loop that you create to actually making it into an arrangement as quickly as possible is one of the keys as well, because otherwise you get trapped inside the loop, I call it. But yeah,
Too
yeah.
many choices. You run into that too many. The one thing I find with people with DAWs is
Well,
I've got
that's
so many choices
yeah.
that then I go down a rabbit hole and then I
So what
lose the
I do
original
is I
intention
only
of the
give
song.
myself 5 tracks. So a bass, a low, mid, a high, and a drum track, and that's all I've got. So because I found that I used to get lost inside the door and have 80 tracks on a song that's unnecessary, and I've found the writing process a lot cleaner and quicker since I've limited the number of tracks I'm allowed to use. Of course, if I decide I want some extra effects or an
Mm-hmm.
arpeggiator or something, I can have more tracks, but I try and limit it to just, those essential 5, which, yeah, I've found.
Yeah. You start going into that Phil Spector
Yeah,
wall
well,
of
some of
sound
our
and you get a
tracks,
little too
sometimes we
much.
do that for, climactic sort of parts in the song. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like the whole thing with
yeah,
modern production when you get the Phil Spectors and you get
mm,
what's happening with the Beatles is the fact that you
yeah,
can use the recording studio as an instrument, and then the DAW becomes maybe too much of that. Um, and it's interesting when you talk about Prince because Prince had a habit of doing these very kind of demo like songs that a lot of people were like, even his Warner Brothers producers would come back to him and say, "Where's the bass line? How come it sounds like a demo?" And he
mm.
would like, "That's the way it is." And it's kind of like sometimes less is
Oh,
more.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, in the space between the notes, the one thing like even in
yep,
jazz, like the space between what you do, the silences is kind of like core. And in some types of music
mm,
today, some people have kind of forgotten that if you space things out or slow it down, like if you run
mm.
it like 40 BPM or 30 BPM and you space things out between the notes, it's a different feel
Yeah,
than when you're
definitely.
running a high BPM, you know?
Dynamics have a huge part in it, and if you look at symphonies and things like that, and operas, they're all, especially classical music, it's all run on dynamics. It can just start with one instrument, and then it can become orchestral, and or it can just flow. It just goes up and down, and it's all dynamics. And I think once you harness dynamics, especially silence, that's an actual sound. Within
Yeah,
itself, the sound of silence. Um,
Yeah.
you have the space, and then you create a space. And I like music that creates a world or a space that you can just
Mhm.
enter into unconsciously, automatically. It just enters you, and it just changes your whole emotional state, or your psychological state as well. It just gets altered straight away the minute upon hearing it. That's what I think is really real music. It's a magical. It can be a very
mm.
magical art form, and it
That's like
depends
kind
if you're coming from it from an ego point, or or a point of wanting to create something. There's different variations of it.
it brings me to your Paradigm song. When I was listening to that song, I kind of felt like a little
Oh, yeah,
spirit of like Sid Barrett because it's very psychedelic.
Yeah,
It's very psychedelic, and it reminded me of the Sid
mm.
Barrett type Pink Floyd, and then get MGMT type of sound. But it had this
Yep.
kind of psytrance feel, but it's got this kind of Sid Barrett kind of vocal feel, which I thought
That's
was
cool.
really
That's
interesting.
cool. Did you we've done the radio edit version of that song and also like a 12-minute sort of bliss out version of the song, which we our natural writing style is we make really long songs, which is a lot harder these days because we're in the age of the goldfish attention.
Yeah,
2 minute
Yeah,
songs,
so we
one and
really
a half
2 minute
minutes.
so
song. Yeah,
now because you can pretty much do whatever you like if you manage yourself. We're releasing a radio edit version of songs mostly, and then our sort of vision for the song, and we naturally like longer sort of songs, like at least 5 minutes, 6 minutes, which is harder to get on playlists. Everyone's like, "I love
yeah.
your song, but if it was 2 minutes long, that would could you do us an edit like that?" I
2 minutes is like
I
that's just
know,
like
yeah, I
that's
can't.
just
Two
starting up
minutes
for
doesn't
me because
feel
I'm a
like enough to
progressive guy.
create a world in, but it's a good challenge, and I'm up for the challenge. But yeah, that is one of our
Yeah.
favourite songs. It's one that we actually wrote very early on in our sort of career, probably four
Mm.
years ago. But it's really fun to jam or to play live because you do get into this hypnotic state with it. and the way that we're set up to play live
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
we're using loops, so we can stay on sections for as long as we like. So if we're really vibing on something, we can just hang on it for like 5 or 10 minutes before exploding. Yeah, so we're triggering
Or you
loops
just
rather than
trigger it.
playing to backing tracks, and
Yeah.
that's a huge thing for me, for our band, is time. It's sort of read off each other and play to a backing track.
I think that's the advantage. I think that bands that are kind of electronic bands rather than DJs are kind of stuck on the CDJ. Though a lot of guys now are running pad clip
Yeah,
oriented systems that can do what you're talking about. But if you're on the CDJ, you're kind of like
yeah,
not doing that. But I've kind of done the same thing that you guys do, except I use a lot of sequencers. So I have
yeah,
like multiple sequencers running hardware synths, and I trigger
yeah.
them with
That's
foot
cool.
pedals and different things. So I can kind of like keep something going or not keep it going or change it and do it
Yeah, that's right.
however I want. But
Yeah, it adds to the live experience as well, because they're not just hearing, you know, what they hear on the CD. They're hearing a different version of the song, which makes it special because it's a one-time, you know, moment in time. It's like it's a curated um, sound. You know, it's a curated set for that particular day, you know, in that particular location. And I think that's what makes it special, because then you get to hear all these other sounds that come out, or you know, the
do you
song.
find that fans like it when you kind of deviate from your bass track,
Mm,
or do they it depends. I know there's some club scene
yeah.
people like the extended jams,
Mm.
but then there's other fans that want to hear something
I think
exactly
fans
the
of
way it was
ours
on
are
the record.
pretty appreciative of, that's part of what we do, and that, seeing a live version of the song, it's going to be slightly different, every time. It still sounds like the song, and there's still the chorus bits and stuff in there. But what
Mm.
we tend to do is more the bridges and the build-ups and dropouts and things like that. We might extend those sections
Mm-hmm.
and sort of tease the listener with, when's that chorus coming, and we'll just hang on it for that extra minute or something until it, it's just ready to explode, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's being a fan of music. Reason I used to go see
Yeah.
Funkadelic was they would do a 20
Yeah.
minute version
Yeah.
of a song.
Yeah,
The
it's
reason I go
amazing.
see the Dead, because the Dead
Mm.
would just jam out forever, or the Allman Brothers. Every time you saw them, they did it different. The solos were all different. It was in the same spirit, but you went to see them because
Yeah.
you could see them 2 nights in a
And I
row,
think if you keep
and they
it
weren't playing the
interesting
same
for the
way.
band
You know,
itself, it then ultimately makes it interesting for the audience. Because I've been in bands where you have to play 4 of this, 4 of that, and it's exactly the same thing every single time to iron it out. So there's no, yeah, and it is a
yeah,
way to burn out
kind
the
of burn
band
out the
really
band.
quickly. Whereas if it keeps it exciting and fresh for the band, that's going to translate to it being exciting and fresh for the listeners. And then, as you say, if someone comes to see you, if you play a couple of shows within a week or something, and someone comes to both shows, they're going to experience a different thing. Yeah.
You're going to hear different guitar solos, different sounds. You know.
Yeah, sometimes you get
Yeah.
these fans, like fans of Pearl Jam,
Mm.
would go see Pearl Jam 3 nights in
Yeah,
a row
that's
because
great.
Eddie would change the lyrics. He purposely would change the lyrics, and people wanted to see the different versions. I
Mm.
hear the different versions every night because he would just change it. I mean, Dylan was famous for that. Dylan used to change like Idiot Wind. There's multiple versions of it, and every time he did it, there's a different version,
Yeah,
different characters, different story. Like he would go and
yeah.
take like the outtake version and do it. Um, and that kind of like if you get hardcore fans, they're like, "Wow, he's doing
I
he's doing
I
the
think
alternate
John
version."
Lennon used to do that with the meanings of his songs as well. So one interviewer would ask him, "Oh, what's this song about?" And he'd say one thing, and then in an interview a week later, he'd say a completely different thing, just to throw people off. Yeah, slightly off topic there, but it just
Yeah,
doesn't.
just to mess them up. Yeah,
But it
Because a
also can
song
be
can be
true
famous
as
about
for
well.
those.
You
multiple
know,
things.
with songs. And as you grow and you have experiences, you realize, because the lyrics do they can come from a subconscious place. So you're probably expressing things that you're not really aware of yourself, and then you realize what you're talking about
Yeah,
later on.
totally.
And then it takes on. We've had that sort of experience of songs where you've done them a couple of years ago, and they were very sort of prophetic in a way, because all these sorts of things that you're singing about actually come true, or they take on this deeper meaning for you, and it's like, oh well, you know, when I just did it like that, but now I realize it's this and this and this, and that's one thing.
Do you guys, like, one of the things I like to do is I go back like a couple of years into my catalog of stuff, right? And then I like, okay, I'm going to reimagine this song. So I'll go back and I'll resample one of my songs, and then I'll like change it, you know, slow it down, reverse it, take a clip here, move things around, and then totally come up with a whole new track. Not that I'm trying to recycle it, but it's like now I have a different vision for it, and then I'll do it. And I tend to do it like more and more. I keep on going back and rehashing some of my older stuff, because now I'm in a different place and I've got different equipment, and now I like, oh, I can kind of use granular synthesis on this thing and change it totally, you know.
We're about to do that with one song that we did a couple of years ago, and United. We've done a bunch of remix albums, which was amazing, because we had all these artists come and remix our songs, which I think I really enjoyed that. I love them. They're just incredible. Usually remix albums, you know, you don't know what you're going to get, but everything was even better. You know, it just added on. It
you
created
did 3 of
another
those,
thing.
Yeah, and another one's about to come out
three.
on the 19th of February as well. The sort of the final installment in this series. We might do more later, but yeah, Volume 4's coming out 19th of February.
And
so those were collabs.
I was just going to quickly.
All of those are.
Pardon me.
Some of it's collaboration. Some of it's we've sent them the stems and they've added and stuff like that. Some of them are done as collabs because they've added their own vocals and things like that. And yeah, some of them were sent back and forth. Like the Blue Dipzig Lab one that we did was definitely collab. There's a full collab on the and by Alex Taylor.
So it Saw You in a Dream.
Saw You in a Dream.
It Saw You in a Dream.
Yeah, we've got a
on the
UK
new remix. Is there going to be a remix version of that?
Who's done an incredible 80s aesthetic version of Saw You in a Dream. Yeah. And he's really good at creating that really nostalgic sort of 80s feel with his stuff. So, yeah, he's done a great version of that. And through doing that one, like, we've become quite good friends with him online, and we're actually doing a single with him, like, for as a collab as well, that will be coming out later.
Oh, so he's got kind of like a new
definitely,
feel, maybe?
So he's a guitarist as well, so he puts quite a bit of guitar in his plays a Firebird guitar, really nice tone, and he's into analog synths as well, so you get some really authentic tones from these old Moog synthesizers and stuff.
I just wanted to
the Prophet 5.
I was just going to quickly.
Prophet 5 is like my favorite.
You go, John.
They're amazing.
We cut you off.
Always. I was just going to finish the question. So basically, from the remixes, there's one song, United, that got remixed. It was the equal version, and then we just played it live recently. And we played the remix version live, but we added stuff to that one as well, like just redid it a little bit more. So we did play the remix live, but as a safety word again. So we're going to go and record that because it's just taken on another level of itself, and so it's going to be like a remix of a remix. Is that how you'd say it? I don't know. Or
it's very postmodern.
It's a remix, a collaboration. So that's about it. So sometimes it just sort of happens, but we're pretty happy with everything that we've done, and we feel it's there, and I think probably the only time we'll do that if it's a remix of a remix. You know, like someone's remixed it, and then we were like, okay, now we can add this and this and this to it. You know, sort of build it, and then who knows, it might be even remixed the third time from that. You know, see how long we can keep it going. You know.
So I mean, I've been like doing a new thing because I got this make noise sampler. They call it Morphogene, and what I like about it is it's kind of like not like a normal sampler because you don't actually see a grid. It's all like it's a Eurorack sampler, so it's all based on like feel, and it's all based on like color. So it shows different colors when you do your splices and you do your time shifting. It has different colors that mean different things, and it's all controlled by CV, so you can suddenly get like an LFO to control the clip, where you can go get an envelope generator to change the nature of the sample. And so a lot of what I do is I use like all these like analog synth modules to actually tear apart the sample in real time and then re-record it and get like a whole new song out of something that's being modified by all these analog signals.
Incredible. Yeah. Well, there's an artist called 55 Kilohertz who's on our remix volume 4 coming out, and he's a real analog head, and he a room full of gear, and he's done a version of one of our songs where he's sort of put all the samples into. I think he uses Eurorack stuff as well, but you know what's come out the other. Very, very different to the original track, but sort of.
I can. You don't get hit on the copyright.
You can hear the song in there somewhere, but it's the most abstract remix of one of our tracks, and it's quite heavy analog sort of club sort of sound, but that's good. But it crosses over into very experimental territory as well, so that's good.
So how are you guys handling, I don't know what your lockdown situation is, in terms of like the corona crisis. Like a lot of us in the US, we're totally locked down. We can't do any
pretty
shows
much
at all.
where we were
able to do shows?
almost probably 10.
Yeah, mid last year.
Last year, and that's when we couldn't even see each other. We could only talk on the phone, and that's where I came up.
You're only allowed to travel like 5 kilometers, and you could only leave your house for like 1 hour a day to exercise, or one person could go and just buy groceries.
Yeah, and we had to
be
in our homes.
That's all you could do.
8 p.m. at night and 8 a.m. or 7:30 in the morning, something like that.
Curfew.
It was really strict, and we're still wearing masks in here, but we can play live music. We played a show the other week, which was our first show in a year, which was really fun.
Oh, cool.
But during the lockdown, because we couldn't see each other, that's when we decided to do this series of remix albums. Had the stems of all our songs, and we thought, what can we do that would be interesting and also sort of bring, people into our world and create a bit of community vibes, when we can't do gigs and we can't even see each other to write songs. Let's do some remixes and,
Are your audience
we were only going to do one album, but it kept just being so much fun. Then people kept approaching us, or I'd have an idea of someone I knew or someone I heard that would be a great thing to remix a song, and so it just sort of kept growing and growing.
Are your audience sizes restricted? Or
the audiences are restricted, so like at the bar we were at the other day, they had a limitation of 50 guests rather than 100 that the bar was at capacity for. Depends on the size of the venue and things like that. It was lifted, because whenever there's a case, our government's very strict with it. If there's a case or something like that, suddenly it goes back to being... So it's hard to plan gigs and do things because you're just not sure. Yeah.
Taking a gamble now, you could have get potentially successful gig, and then if a case pops up and then the restrictions come back on, well, that's just
rather than having 200
just destroys
people,
everything.
so you lose
hard to break
$3/4 of your money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to break even when you're like in the U.S. Like you go to New York City, you get like a 300-seat club,
Yeah,
and then they tell
and
you
you
they
got to
can only have
pay,
like
you know, the
50
other
people in
bands
it,
and the sound engineer and all this
and
stuff,
then
and you've
it's not
got
even. Yeah, it doesn't even
yeah.
work. So you don't even do it.
Yeah.
They've been
You've
doing
gone
it in
really
L.A. They've
quiet
been
all of
doing
a
like
sudden.
drive-ins, so they actually take a drop.
Hi,
Hello.
I can just hear you very quiet.
Yeah. Okay, you're still there.
Maybe
Oh,
you
okay,
might need
I'll
to
just
move
put
around.
you.
Oh,
Yeah,
I can hear you fine.
okay.
Might be your internet connection.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but what I'm saying is they have a drive-in theater type of thing where everybody's in their car in LA, and they actually have the band on a drive-in stage, and everybody
yeah,
has to
that
be in their
that
car. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it kills the vibe, doesn't it?
yeah.
It's really killed the live music vibe in a really big way. And at the same time, it's okay, let's find ways around it.
Mm.
And I think it's more about you get a good. If you have recordings of music, I think it's good. I'm also been talking to Simon. I think we've been toying with the fact of just doing some live,
Streaming.
Insta gigs and stuff like that, just on Instagram, and some jams or
Yeah.
something, just so people can tune in and try that or
Yeah,
something.
Twitch is good for that.
Yeah.
You might want to try Twitch
Oh, Twitch.
if you
Okay.
can get on. Yeah, the video game app. They've been pushing more musicians lately. I've been doing some stuff
Yeah.
there, and it's pretty. They have a pretty good signal,
That's good to know.
and
Yeah.
it doesn't cut out.
Oh, wow. Okay, that
Like,
sounds good.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, Facebook.
Yeah.
I was trying, and not to push them down, but they
Yeah, and the other thing
halfway
with
through my gig, it
Facebook
like
is if you're
crapped
playing
out
an original
No.
a
song
couple of
and
times. I'm like,
they can just mute your audio if the algorithms detect it as someone else's song. But
yeah,
but it could be your song that it's detecting on
it's totally
Spotify,
wrong.
you know.
Yeah, and they're
They've
wrong
muted
like
your
all the
own
time.
song that you're playing because the algorithms have detected it as a song that exists,
Yeah,
but it's your song. So they've
yeah, that's what drives me crazy. I tried to do a song. I released an album. I tried to play it,
yeah,
and then
that's what I mean.
they
Because it's not a
muted the audio,
human
and it's all
deciding;
mine.
it's an algorithm computer. So it's just they go, oh, that's a song I found detected as a release. So I'm going to mute it. But yeah,
Yeah, so I went to Twitch.
yeah,
Twitch didn't do
the
that. At least they
platforms
don't
keep
do it right
changing.
now. Maybe they
But yeah,
will, but
live
they haven't.
streaming is something we want to get into more. We did play a live stream, sort of when we just came out of lockdown for a UK based thing called Not the Main Stage, which
Mm.
was really fun to do. And yeah, with time different stuff, if we want to sort of like
Those are
this phone
cool.
call, if we want to sort of play to the US or UK market, which is actually where most of our fan base is, to be to be honest, we've got to sort of play our live streams at quite awkward times for us. But yeah, like 7 in
Yeah.
the morning or something. Yeah,
Yeah,
when we're not feeling
yeah. That's
particularly
the
rock and
problem. That
roll, but.
You guys, like
Yeah,
in the UK and the US is like your primary
that's right.
market,
Yeah,
right?
so with
So you got
with
to kind
even
of stick to
posting to
that.
Instagram and stuff like that, like some 7 a.m. is the time that I found really good, or 9 o'clock at night sort of thing, is when our audience is most active.
Yeah, we're doing.
Yeah,
We gotta send it back to the past because we're in the future.
Yeah,
Like
we're in the future. Yeah,
is that right, Simon? Are we a day ahead usually? So when it's like the 18th,
yeah.
it's the
You got yeah.
17th
Well,
somewhere
so
else,
I
and
lived in
at
it's
7
it's a
I
bit
a.m.
lived in
tricky
now.
Japan.
doing numerological releases. You know.
Yeah, back in 2004, I
Mm.
lived in Japan, so I kind of know how that goes. For 2 years, I lived in Tokyo,
Oh wow!
and
Did you go to the Fuji Rock Festival?
I
Mm.
didn't get to do
That would
that,
have
but I
been
was
good.
in Shibuya all the time, going to
Okay.
all these clubs, and I was like really kind of totally entranced by the fact that you had like
Mm.
Japanese bands that could like mimic like every genre.
Yes, it's incredible. I think Japan is one of the most fascinating places. I really loved. I don't know if you ever got into post rock,
Mm.
but Mono, they're a Japanese
Yeah.
post rock band. Incredible. Oh,
Yeah, I used to listen to Asian Kung Fu Generation. I saw them one time.
oh wow.
But yeah, I would go to Shibuya and I'd see a
Mm.
band doing Sun Ra. you know, they were doing Miles Davis, they were doing Coltrane, and
Far
they were
out.
doing it. And I was like, damn, these guys are good. And I did
Perfectionist.
another club, and they were doing like Motown, and they were in some Marvin Gaye, and I'm like, and they were doing like deep cuts, not popular cuts. And I'm like, wow, these guys are really into it. I just was really, and they had a lot of respect. You know, it seemed like they weren't just trying to rip it off. Some of them were inspired by it. Some of them were doing things in the, you know, but they're writing their own stuff. And I was like, wow, this stuff is awesome, you know. And I was in, you know, Akihabara all the time in Electric Town,
Oh,
going
wow.
into the keyboard shops, picking up
Yeah,
like old
Old vintage
Jupiter,
stuff.
that
yeah,
sounds
Yeah.
Jupiter
great.
sixes and
Yeah,
stuff.
Full on.
Yeah, it's just a fun time if you're into music because
That
they
would have
got
been
so much
incredible,
stuff
yeah.
going on. Yeah, there's a lot going on, but
Especially the early 2000s, there was so much going on musically. I felt like there was this real, you know, it was going to really go to another level, which I think it cusped and then it just sort of all, I don't know,
yeah,
just something happened. But
yeah,
it
I don't know
was
what
really
happened.
exciting time, especially early 2000s music was incredible stuff. It was just coming out everywhere.
Yeah, I'm always. Well, it seems like all the energy is like
mm.
what I do this podcast is I talk to indie artists, you know, and all the energy is on SoundCloud and YouTube and all these
hmm
alternative, where all the bands I want to hear are, you know, bands that are doing
yeah,
stuff that's new and doing what they want to do, and that's why I do this podcast is because I want to give like more than 10 minutes to an indie band to kind
yeah,
of
that's
talk about
great.
what they do, you know. Because I think they just
No, it's greatly appreciated. Yeah,
Yeah,
yes, it's good intention. I think it really opens up a lot of streams, especially for artists. We're very grateful to be on your show. So yeah, thank you
yeah,
very much. I
So
believe
are
things will
you
keep going.
besides? Yes, I mean, so besides your remix album, are you guys working on any? Are
yeah,
you
yeah.
on a
Definitely,
strategy
we've
where you're
been
going to put
doing a
singles out, where
we've
you're
Yes,
been doing a
working on like
single every
albums?
yeah,
week
we're
for
always
the
working.
last, not every week, every sort of 5 to 6 weeks for the last year. And it's a really good sort of thing to aim for and to sort of just keep us, you know, always thinking into the future. So we sort of always have, you know, the next at least 2 to 3 singles planned. So we're sort of looking in. So the next sort of thing we're looking at doing is our song Blue Ocean. So we did the collaborative version with Lipsy Lab, but now we're going to release
Mm.
our version of it. And then after that, we're going to do the remix of the remix, which was the Echo United remix. We're going to remix his remix, and we're gonna add extra, yeah, vocals,
Yeah,
guitars,
just add some
synths,
new
and
guitars
some
and
bigger sort of build ups and
synths
yeah,
and
drops and stuff like that in it. So it's going to be fairly clubby. So it'll be one of the most sort of dance friendly things that we've ever done. But I find, yeah, that's good for
mm,
the crossover as well, because sometimes we can be seen by festival bookers as sort of like a chill
there's
band,
another.
and we actually like when we play live to be quite danceable and, you know, not have to play in that early time slot because we're chill. We, you know, actually like getting people up and moving around and
Mhm.
that kind of thing. Yeah, yeah. But now that we've got a
Start
lot
being
of music,
pumping.
we can sort of do both styles of sets because, you know, we can play extremely down tempo art gallery sets and then also dance
Yeah.
festival friendly sort of sets as well. Yeah.
So do you what's your feeling on streaming services and how it affects the industry? I mean, 'cause part of the reason I'm able to talk to you is because of streaming services. But then it's kind of like a double-edged sword in different ways. What are your overall thoughts as
I
an
I
artist?
I think it's again, it just depends on your mindset. And I was saying to Simon, because now music is so oversaturated. I think there's like 80,000 songs come out, are released every single day. And you're actually fighting, you know, or you can put yourself in a headspace where you're fighting, you know, with 80,000 songs to be heard. And I always said to Simon, you know, I, I, I believe, you know, and I don't like to believe things, but I'll say I feel that this biggest success comes with just doing a song in the first place. If you're able to create a song and record it and do it. I mean, there's 3/4 of the world who will never have that chance of doing in this present time in our existence. They won't have that access to computers or access to instruments to put out a song. They'll just be a dream, and the fact that we can do it, in our first world, lifestyle is a huge success. So that's just doing the music is already a big success for me. It doesn't worry me if it goes anywhere. But at the same time, as an artist, you want your music to be heard and you want to be sharing it. And I think as many platforms as it is that are happening, I think it's a good thing. It's also an oversaturated thing as well. But the main thing is it allows people to stumble across things, and that's another beautiful thing. It's like when you go into an op shop or something, or a records, when you could go in a record store or something, or you're just YouTubing and you come across an artist you've never heard from before, and you just you fall in love with it. It's like, oh, I've just discovered this. And I think it also makes people now think, okay, let's jump onto this service, let's jump onto that one. Or I think what you're doing is excellent, because you're bringing and connecting a lot of musicians together. And it's like now, right, musicians being on your show, they're more likely to tell their friends, or to tune in and or go back in your back catalogue, see who else you've had on, and it just sort of you're already creating something there as well. So I think
Yeah.
it's, in a way, it's anything that creates a connection is a good thing, potentially.
It's always good to create a scene.
Yeah.
I'm trying to create like a
Definitely.
podcast scene, and I've actually had artists on my podcast actually collaborate with other artists
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
heard
Well,
that artist and they went and talked to him
that's what's amazing. Yeah,
because they
Exactly.
heard my interview,
yeah,
and then they say, "Oh, I'm going to talk to this person."
It
yeah.
wouldn't have
So
happened if
we've
you didn't
started
initiate
working
it. So
with
it's all about that initiation as
started
well.
working with
Yeah,
international
It creates
artists
a
through
lot.
the power of the internet, and it always starts with sliding into a DM and saying, "Hey, I really like your stuff," and just being genuine with them and saying, "I really like your stuff. Here's a couple of examples of what we do. Would you like to?" And times out of 10, everyone has always just been a
yeah,
stuff too. Let's do something together, and it's got that power to connect artists, with people all around the world, and I find it absolutely incredible. And also because there's no gatekeeper now, you can be DIY and fiercely independent, and
yeah. You can work.
yeah.
You don't have some agent telling you can't work
Well,
with
that's
somebody
right. And
because
if
the
you want to
record site
release a
somebody says you can't
20-minute
work with
song or an hour song, that's
Yes.
just that
No
yeah,
one's going to stop you. You're free.
them. Yeah, I just released like a
that's right.
30-minute
Yeah. So there's
rehearsal yesterday
no
just because
one
I
sort of
felt like
telling
doing
you you
it.
can't do
Yeah,
anything.
exactly.
The rule book's been thrown out, and you can do whatever you want to create, realize your artistic vision, which is I find just absolutely incredibly inspiring. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we might cut off because
Not a problem at all.
Anchor tends to cut at like 75 minutes. So, but I wanted to tell you guys I appreciate that you came on the show. And if you want to
Yeah.
come on again when you have a new release and you want to coordinate it so we, synced
Sure.
up with the album release, let me know. And we're going to send this out within an hour. It'll be on 11.
Mm-hmm.
Well, initially it'll be on Spotify, Apple, and Anchor, and then it will cascade to 11 platforms in total, podcast platforms. And
Yep.
I'll send you the links to the top 3 ones I just mentioned,
Awesome.
and I'll put it on my channel as well. So looking forward to
Yeah.
what you guys are doing in 2021. And I hope everybody can check out the Safety Word, support your favorite artist. Make sure that you buy
Yeah,
your
we've got
merch. If
T-shirts and
you guys
hoodies.
are
Yep.
selling merch, you're selling stuff, go to their website.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm including your internet links on the podcast, so they'll be able to go to your store and get anything
www.thesaftyword.com.
you've got going.
Yeah.
Yep. Now beyond the podcast itself. So thank you for being
Thank
on the
you.
show, Safety
Yeah.
Word, and
Thank you
Awesome.
very
Have a
much for
great day,
having
be
man.
us.
safe. Yeah. Thank you. You too.
Yeah, take care. And yeah, once again, we're very grateful for the time that you've allocated for us, and yeah, we really appreciate it. So thank you very much. And yes, we look forward to the future, and yeah, hopefully get another podcast when we release another song at some point. That'll be great.
Cool.
We'll
Thank
talk
you.
then.